We are live. We are live. Hit that like button. Welcome back to the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. I want to talk about something that's becoming a little bit of a cultural phenomenon of the moment. Is anybody watching A Night of the Seven Kingdoms right now? What's going on in the chat? Put some ones in the chat if you are watching A Night of the Seven Kingdoms right now. I don't know if you've noticed, but the show was already widely what do you call it, critically acclaimed. People were really falling in love with the show already. And now we're up to, I don't know which episode we're at right now, but the most recent episode was brutal. It was brutal, but it was epic. It was very epic. And it gave a little bit of backstory to the character, Sir Dunk. It's based on the George R.R. Martin Game of Thrones universe. There's a story that takes place well apart from any other events that we are familiar with right now. But it's a very compelling show. Let's put it that way. And it tells the story of Dunk and Egg, another novel that Martin has put out previously. But now we follow Dunk. He's a knight, what they call a hedge knight. You know, he's a bum. He ain't got nothing but a horse and a sword, that type of guy, right? But he gets caught up in a situation. And I don't want to give out too many spoilers. I'll refrain from giving many spoilers, but you know, you will get some spoilers. I can't help it. It has to be done to tell the story today. I'm doing the thing today. It has to be done. But I want to just talk about not even all of the poignant moments of the show, because it really isn't about spoilers per se, but the show kind of, it's leading up, well, it has led up to a particular clash where, you know, the brutality of the moment almost told the story of the man himself, right? And I want to kind of focus on that type of appeal, because honestly, the point of the show today is actually the concept of heroism and in literature, and more importantly, more directly rather, Black comics / literature, the concept of pure heroism. And I think right now, what a lot of the internet, and especially a lot of the white guys on the internet, what they are rallying around right now is just a moment of pure cinematic literary heroism that was well crafted, well written. They didn't do a lot of over the top CGI. It's not a very computer graphic heavy kind of thing, but the great storytelling moment and the pure heroism of it all is kind of like becoming a kind of white man, Western culture rallying point. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today.
Arise, a knight of the Seven Kingdoms.
Oaken Iron, guard me well, or else I'm dead and doomed to hell.
And he taught me how to be a knight. Not just sword and lance, but honor. A knight defends the innocent. That's all I did. I was not Sir Erland's blood, but I have followed his example. As your sons will follow yours. Who will stand and fight with me? Has courage deserted the noble houses of Westeros? I will not believe it is so. And there are no true knights among you.
I will take Sir Duncan's side.
These are moments that, great heroic figures are built on, the call to battle, the call to brotherhood, fighting for heroic ideals, putting your life on the line for, the innocent, the weak. These are all part of the traditional heroic archetype. And it was all brought together in a very, very great moment. And I love the internet. I just got to tell you, the memes that come out of these things, the little edits that people are making right now, the algorithm is going to strike me so hard for this, but it has to be done.
Arise,
Wait,
a knight.
Wait, wrong one. Hold up, my bad, wrong one. Here we go.
Get up!
Of a total accusation.
Great moment in the show. Just amazing cinematic storytelling, all that. But again, what makes a character heroic? From the literary archetypical standpoint, what makes the character heroic? What is heroism? Why does such a thing compel men? Why is this so compelling? If you had actually watched the full scene, the buildup of it all, the flashback storytelling of it all, the kind of poignant moments to get up, that whole thing was a great buildup. And what is it about these moments that actually compel, especially the male mind? That kind of broad self-identification thing, that kind of internet meme. Like, why do all the why is Goku such a hero for Mexican culture for whatever reason? Like, why do these things compel the male mind? Like, what is it about the concept of, the hero? He fights against all odds. He takes a beating. He comes back for more. Even though he's on the brink of death, he manages to scratch out a victory. There's something almost universally compelling about the hero figure. And this is why the hero has a sort of archetype, whether it's, Batman, Spider-Man, the Hulk, the Hulk, Thor, whatever characters you want to name, there is a kind of archetype to the quote hero. Hulk is probably a bad example, but still, there is a kind of archetype to the sort of hero as a concept. And this is why particular characters with their own unique storylines and their own character flaws and histories, they have come to represent forms of heroism. This is why I named kind of comic book figures, because we're going to talk a little bit more about comic books today, but this of course extends into like the movie realm or whatever. But there is a particular thing about the hero, and this actually goes all the way back deep into like ancient human storytelling. Thor exactly is a great example of that, where the idea of the hero is actually something deeply, deeply ingrained into the human animal that it is inescapable in our relative storytelling of the world, right? The fact that the heroic figure is an ancient human archetype says something about the very nature of man, and that there is a desire to push harder, a desire to reach higher, to fight longer, to outlast the opponent, to outlast the opponent, to outlast death itself. Honestly, the heroic figure in a lot of ways is a kind of rejection of death itself. It's an embrace of one's death, an embrace of one's mortality, and an eventual, even momentarily, because we all must die, but even in death, there's the heroic sacrifice, but there's the kind of embracing and overcoming death. And even in touching on the heroic sacrifice argument of it all, this idea of I take death onto myself, not as something that is done to me, but as something that I do to further something greater than myself, right? There's something very, very ancient and powerful about the heroic figure. And this is kind of the things I want to talk about this and juxtapose these basic, raw, archetypical notions of heroism with the unfortunate Black hero representation that, more often than not comes up in literature. I want to share something else with you guys. Let me drop this graphic. SKC, oh, this would be right up your alley. Listen, you don't have to work today, You could totally indulge yourself in conversations about heroism and Black comic figures. You totally don't have to. Whatever you're doing it can wait 105 minutes. SK, come on, is it really that important? But no, let me drop this graphic. I want to share something with you guys here. There's a post somebody put up. In the 1950s, the portrayal of a Black man in a position of authority and the discussion of racism in a comic was at the center of a battle between entertaining comics editor William Gaines and the Comics Code Authority. The story depicted human astronaut, a representative of the Galactic Republic, visiting the planet Cybrenia, inhabited by robots. He finds the robots divided into functionally identical orange and blue races, one of which has fewer rights and privileges than the other. The astronaut decides that due to the robot's bigotry, the Galactic Republic should not admit the planet. In the final panel, he removes his helmet, revealing himself to be a Black man. Murphy demanded that the Black astronaut had to be removed. So he said it can't be a Black person. So I said, for God's sake, Judge Murphy, that's the whole point of the goddamn story. So he said, no, it can't be a Black. Bill Gaines just called him up later and raised the roof. And finally, they said, well, you got to take the perspiration off. I had the stars glistening and the perspiration on his Black skin. Bill said, F you, and he hung up. Now, this is an old tale from the 50s, obviously, highlighting the Black man's racial struggle, trying to tell some intergalactic space alien cosmic tale or whatever. Now, I think it's interesting that even in the 50s, and maybe because, we were a lot closer to a particular time and place back in the 50s, you get a little bit more credit for that kind of thing, cut you a little bit more slack for that kind of thing. But I do think it's interesting that more often than not, when given the opportunity, a lot of our Black creatives, our thinkers, our writers, our artistes, what they will do is give you a vision of Blackness where the very concept of heroism, the very concept of struggle itself, it's no longer a broad struggle against the universal forces of death and deprivation. It's almost always a more personal, maybe granular struggle against the forces of, quote, oppression and the forces of, quote, racism, the forces of white supremacy, you know? The white man is always the boogeyman. Even in Unag fantasies, the white man is always your boogeyman. Even when you dream the impossible dream, even when you take your soul out into the infinite, wide open, deep, deep, dark universe that is space, your enemy is still the white man. Even when it's, even symbolically, your enemy is perpetually the white man. And that bothers me, obviously. I find that, you know, I find that somewhat troubling, I won't deny. And this is a trope that comes up over and over and over again. And to you know, the credit of the larger comic world, it's not a constant thing, but it's ever present nonetheless, though.
The US government told this black superhero that he needed to wear a white face if he wanted to keep saving people. His name is Icon, but his real name is Augustus Freeman. He was an alien that crash landed on Earth as a baby during slavery. Since his first human contact was with black people, he shapeshifted into a black person, and that's how he lived for good. After Jim Crow, he became a rich lawyer, eventually inspired by a young liberal black girl, Raquel Irvin, and together they became Icon and Rocket. However, Icon would often get criticized by black people for being too tough on crime. They'd say he arrests too many black people. And like many folks who can't handle disagreement, they called him an Uncle Tom and a coup. Icon's ship was the only way to get back to his home planet, but it was damaged when it arrived on Earth and it was never repaired. Until the US government gave Icon a proposition. They would fully fix his escape pod for him only if he used it to shapeshift himself into a white man. And he would have to leave Dakota and essentially become Milestone's Captain America. Can serve all of America, not just Dakota, which really means protect and serve white people. Rocket would then take up the mantle of Icon and Dakota, still fighting the good fight, while Augustus was off saving white people. But this was all just a fictional story that Raquel was drawing in her notebook. Icon would never actually sell us out like this, right? She thought as she closed the notebook and went to sleep. Now, although Icon didn't take up the offer to sell out and wear whiteface, there is another black character who did, and things did not go well. His name is Zero by Christopher Priest and Chris Cross, and we'll talk about that next.
Now, clearly, there is some kind of pattern with a lot of these black characters, and I'm noticing that, like I said, it's just ever present. It's almost inescapable, but it's always a thing with these black characters where not every act that they engage in is purely, you know, them fighting the white man, fighting racism, all these kinds of things. It's not quite that, but almost like their entire origin is something deeply caught up in attempting to deal with, fight racism, fight white supremacy, like symbolically help you to imagine that, you know, your enemy as a young black child is like, you know, the mystical white man. And, you know, somebody mentioned Blue Marvel in the chat. The same thing with Blue Marvel. His origin story is something similar to that. You know, it was racism back in the day. They didn't want him to be a powerful black man. So they was like, hey, yo, could you just go like hide in another galaxy, some shit like that. Like they always have some type of interesting racial dynamic that is somehow a part of his character buildup. You know, even when they passed over Steve Rogers' shield to the black guy, when they made a black guy Captain America, when they made Falcon Captain America, and then you watch Falcon's show, like the subplots of the whole Falcon show was, oh, well, they had this black guy that got done dirty back in the day because he was really the first Captain America. Did you know the first Captain America was really secretly a black man? Like they gave you that type of shit. They really did give you that type of like technology type of story. It was crazy, but that's what they did to you. Like, yeah, the original Captain America was secretly a black man. But they didn't want a black man to be that powerful back then. They said, no, America couldn't handle a strong black man like that. So they locked that nigga up on a false murder charge. Like, bro, they really did that. They really did that. And I was just thinking about it, like, you know, you could have told a lie. You could have gave the character so many other interesting things, but you really just made him a typical nigga. Like, goddamn. You just can't get away from the shit. You really just can't escape the shit. And then, you know what? I noticed recently, too, there's a content creator that I actually watch from time to time. I enjoy his work. And he got caught up in a little bit of a controversy recently because the fact that there's this urge to like black up the characters and always have them, you know, fighting the race war and all that, it becomes by nature a very political thing. And then that just makes it propaganda. Your black identity has become, if not maybe was always, some type of propaganda.
Okay, so one of the things that I want to point out here is that just because I don't talk about politics does not mean I'm oblivious to it. And don't trick yourself into thinking that that's the case. As far as my personal political views go, I mean, I have a combination of, you know, liberal views and conservative views, right? For example, I believe in a woman's right to have an abortion, but I also believe in the death penalty. Now, the problem that I have with the death penalty is I think it gets used when it doesn't need to be used. As I understand it, most violent offenders in the American prison system who are legitimately guilty of their violent offenses are actually people who are struggling with antisocial personality disorders. And I think that greater emphasis needs to be put on treating those mental health disorders instead of throwing them into a hole for 25 years and saying, now think about what you've done while we turn you into cheap labor, or just outright killing them. But I also recognize that there are some people out there who just cannot be fixed, that if they were released into society would represent a clear and present danger to society. And in that instance, the only choice left is to kill them. In that instance, yes, I support the death penalty. Having said that, no, I'm not a Trump supporter, and no, I'm not a fan of ICE. But I'm also not a fan of political extremism. And you see a lot of that, especially here on Twitter, which is not representative of the real world. But you do see political extremism. For example, right, you open up Twitter and you see a video where an ICE agent runs up on somebody with brown skin, right? Show me your papers. It's like, well, I mean, am I being pulled over? Get out of the car, right? And they're thrown in handcuffs and carried away for daring to question an immigration officer. And you see these comments down below. People say, well, they should have just done what they were told, right? That's a federal authority. They uphold the law, and it's your job to follow it. Well, that's problematic. Why? Because in the 1960s, a man named Stanley Milgram wanted to understand why it was that during the Nuremberg trials, so many former Nazi officers and soldiers kept saying the same thing. I was just following orders. Were they really following orders and doing these heinous things, or were they just lying? And so what he did is he conducted an experiment. You have person A and you have person B. The job of person A was to ask person B a series of questions. Every time person B got the question wrong, person A would electrocute them. Now, person B was in on the experiment. They weren't actually being electrocuted. But person A, the severity of the electric shock administered by person A was increased over time to the point that person A was actually administering a fatal electric shock to person B. And what Stanley Milgram found was that in a majority of the time, when I say a majority, I want to say the number was in excess of 60%, like 65%, but I'm not going to swear to that. But in a majority of the time, person A would kill person B. Why? Because they felt like they were being told to do so by a person in a position of authority. In this instance, a doctor with a lab coat and a clipboard who was saying things like the experiment must continue. It's imperative that we continue. What person A was doing is they were saying, okay, this doctor's telling me the experiment must continue. But if it continues, I would kill person B. But they're telling me it has to continue, which means it has to continue. So I have to kill person B, and they would kill person B. But what about the doctor, the person engaging, who's clearly a stand-in for people giving these nefarious orders in the first place? Well, a lot of you guys have probably heard of the Stanford experiment. If you haven't, it was conducted by Philip Zimbardo in the 1970s. What Philip Zimbardo did is he took 24 college males down to the basement of Jordan Hall and then split them into 2 equal groups, 12 people on each side. One group were the prisoners, and the other group were the prison guards. Then he walked away, and what he found was that the prison guards started abusing the prisoners, right, psychologically tormenting them, like depriving them of food and sleep and different things like that. So much so that Philip Zimbardo had to come in and shut the experiment down in 6 days. However, in 2018, there was a book called History of a Lie, which was written by some French researcher whose name I can't pronounce, who actually studied the Stanford experiment. And what he found is that what looked to be happening is that Philip Zimbardo went into the whole experiment with a preconceived notion, wanting a preconceived outcome, which is that when it comes to power dynamics, people in positions of authority will inevitably abuse their power. And so apparently, Philip Zimbardo and his research staff were coaching the prison guards on how to abuse the prisoners. And
one thing that's interesting about these sort of experiments, and again, to dovetail this back into just the world of comics and writing and whatnot, this is something I was thinking about before, the idea of morality as told through the comic book world. Like, why is it wrong to kill evil people? You have these heroes, Superman being the greatest embodiment of this problem. Why shouldn't Superman kill like the Joker or something? Let alone Batman. The fact that Batman is caught in this eternal struggle against a figure like the Joker, who represents almost an archetypical, like a cosmic level of evil, right? It's just sort of like a malevolent force that's always with the human spirit. Why would it be wrong to kill that figure? And comic books, I do think, on the one hand, kind of it muddies your moral clarity when it comes to these sort of notions, but these are the kind of mediums that you do get to at least express these sort of conundrums and work them through, and then have, heroic storytelling and all that around it. But again, why would these things be wrong?
How to create a psychologically torturous environment. Now, I say all that to say, if you just simply follow the orders of a person who's in a position of authority for no other reason than the fact that they're in a position of authority and upholding the law, number one, you're assuming that person is not operating with some kind of nefarious bias, whether it was imposed on them or one they chose themselves. And number two, you're assuming the law was just. Just because a law exists does not mean the law is right. But what about the other side? Right? The idea of just defying social norms and customs based on nothing other than how you feel. Well, that's how you end up with Timothy McVeigh. So in the 1990s, there was a guy named Larry Gilbreth who was dropping off a package out in Texas. And he discovered that this package and other packages he had been delivering contained automatic rifles, arms, and armament. So Larry notifies the authorities, and it works its way all the way up to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the ATF. So the ATF conducts an investigation of their own, some would say under pretty suspicious circumstances. But the ATF discovers that inside this compound is a religious group called the Branch Davidians, who are stockpiling firearms because they believe the end times are coming. Not only that, the ATF is led by a man named David Koresh, who apparently was diddling underage girls. And we're going to end that conversation there. So the ATF attains a search warrant. And when they try to execute that warrant, depending on whose version of the story you choose to believe, either the ATF fired first or the ATF was fired on first. But this led to the involvement of the FBI. And what followed was a 51-day standoff, at the end of which the FBI raided the compound with tear gas. Fire erupted in 3 separate locations. And when the smoke cleared and the shooting stopped, a handful of federal agents and every single Branch Davidian man, woman, and child had died. Now, in response to the government's handling of the siege of Waco and the events of Ruby Ridge the year before, when federal authorities got into a fire...
Not for nothing, bro. You're doing a lot of like narrative building. You were just talking about why you don't talk about comic politics and stuff. Now you're doing you're doing a whole lot. You're doing a whole lot right now, bro. There was something else I wanted to get into too. There was something else that was I forgot what happened with him, but anyway, though, I wonder about this issue of Black heroism, right? And the problem of Black heroism, so to speak. Hold on, let me see something. I think that.
I just wanted to drop this video because there is some stuff going on in the nerd community that I really have to talk about. You probably heard about this already if you've been paying attention, if you're on YouTube, anywhere, TikTok, it's been going around. Just to let you in on everything or what I know of the situation is basically this account Blurred Without Fear, who is Blurred Without Fear. He's a blurred who speaks on pretty much everything that fall on Earth. So it's just like we do, and they're definitely more of a left-leaning revolutionary type of channel, same vibe that we are on, basically. Well, they called out this channel Comics Explained, and Comics Explained is the biggest YouTuber who talks comics.
I am the biggest comic book content creator in the world. Full stop.
So basically, Comics Explained is one of those channels who, will read a comic book to you so you don't have to buy it yourself. They'll explain everything that goes on to you in the comic. They'll explain different characters, etc. And by their own admission, the dude, Rob is the gentleman's name who runs Comics Explained. Ernie is the brother who runs Blur Without Fear. Rob is a centrist, meaning he, sits on the fence, basically. He's straight down the middle. He's neither left or right. He's not conservative or liberal. He is straight up in the middle. And Ernie, Blur Without Fear, basically had a lot to say. He called his brother a
Oh, wow.
and a
Oh, wow.
again and again. So, of course, Comics Explained had a reaction video where he defended himself. And in defending himself, I was like, I mean, look, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, straight up, like, you already know where I'm from and how I feel. I don't really get down with that. I do not believe in anyone in 2026 can call themselves a centrist. You are either for one side or the other. Like, I know I hate to be so binary, etc. And I know I have views that are conservative on some things and liberal on others. But when it comes to the overall general sense of where we are at in this country right now, there is no time for that. I don't want to hear it, fam. And I don't want to hear it when people are comparing, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just listen to what he had to say, about what Ernie had to say about him.
When I sit down and I make a video, I do not at any point take into account the skin color of the writer, the artist, or the main character, their race, or any of that stuff. The only standard I use is whether or not I enjoy the story. The only time that race plays a factor is if the race of that character is an intrinsic part of that story. And that's when I use the example of Blue Marvel, right? And kind of give a quick bit of a synopsis in order for people to understand how race played a role within that story, right? And how that kind of feeds into whether or not, I focus on race when I'm talking about making a video or deciding to make a video. But yeah,
and basically after that, he talks about how mad he was because, like I said, Ernie did call him again and again, and a bunch of other things. So
I wanted to just kind of get caught up on that little particular Black nerd controversy happening right now, because it all kind of ties into the concept I want to talk about a little bit today, right? The problem of traditional heroism versus Black men, Black people, right? Black culture. And I think we can kind of conceptualize this problem a lot better if I were to shift your focus away from comic books a little bit into something a little bit more broadly understandable, which is patriarchy. Now, you guys remember, we covered this conversation the other day. I'm not going to delve back into it too long, but I need you to focus on this particular piece of it so we can all understand my issue with Black culture and traditional heroism. There is a fundamental problem here that I just, you know me, nobody else gonna do it like me. I have to explore this issue. Shout out to Ms. Cantrell, the $4.99. Thank you so much. Shout out to the First Lady of the Church. Good morning, everybody. Please hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Drop $1 in the hat.
I need that money.
How do we keep nurturing that? How do we keep this going outside of this, right? Like, and how do we? It's so.
I think we got to make patriarchy look not attractive. Yes, I think that right now our community is experiencing a red pill pipeline, a conservative alt-right pipeline that's really, really appealing to a lot of young Black boys. And I think that because they catching these, you know what I'm saying, boys, say 12, 13, 14. Patriarchy and misogyny and sexism, that shit is really like it turned them on. Yes. So by the time they get to our age, we seen as some sipping, lame ass panderers. So the issue is that we're not being intentional in this conversation with how to get them young boys.
You know, one of the things that now stands out to me as I replay this whole conversation over, there's nothing heroic about anybody on this channel. None at this table. I mean, none of these men at this table seem to embody or exude anything, quote, heroic. And so from there, now the question stands, how does one approach heroism without the concept of patriarchy? Can you be heroic without being patriarchal? What would that look like? And I think one of the problems that, you know, especially Black culture is having is because, quote, patriarchy, and especially in the minds and the worlds of you know, all these liberal niggas over here, because these ideas basically code as white culture, as Western culture even. So for a lot of these men, what that basically translates into is, for them, heroism is war against Western culture. It's like war. It's like fighting. It's fighting your own house. It's setting your house on fire. Effectively, they are setting their own houses on fire and calling it heroism. They are at war with the very soil that they live in. How can you be heroic without patriarchy?
You're focusing on our career. For sure. Them incel niggas, the men that's patriarchs, that's into, you feel me, that's them, they really trying to be intentional about getting the young boys. So I'm thinking about
they agree pushing past the racism to get it's like because it's wild, because you think like, okay, these people, like you're talking about the alt-right pipeline, a lot of the people that have the podcast and they're the loudest voices right now, mostly cis white men, and they're looking past the racism and they're attracted to the patriarchy because it means power and domination.
What does that mean, real quick? Just because I love that everybody's talking about patriarchy and using the words, but what does that mean? Because I think what are the alt-right appealing to that makes people? Because they're not saying, hey, come to the patriarchy, everybody. It's great over here. You get what I'm saying? You want to be a real man. Let me tell you what a real man
is. Powerful, dominate. I'm gonna make more money than you. I'm gonna be able to control. And
how can Black culture embrace being powerful and dominant, having control, all these masculine concepts? How can you master these things if you are at war with these things? If you automatically associate these things with white people, white culture, whiteness, whatever that means to you. How can you now master these things that you have said are inherently evil or bad or wrong or something like that?
Yes.
Essentially that.
Man of the house, he makes the decisions. The woman sits there and listens. Only two places in the world for a woman: in the kitchen and the bedroom. Type mindset, that stupid shit.
So I go around a lot of poor white people, working class white folks, who, when Trump was coming in, I saw this coming a mile away. Because for them, there's a box that everybody gets to check in order to progress. Black people can check a box and progress a little bit. Queer people can check a box and progress a little bit, but there's no box for white people. And you're telling me I have a privilege that I've never seen before. That's their.
You telling me I progressed?
So it's like, but everyone else is having power. I got to maintain power because it's about power. So how do we either destabilize the ideology around power, or how do we shift?
It's things like this. It's owning our, I guess if you.
How can you be a hero if you have no power? If you run from the very concept of power itself, how do you then become some type of hero? How does that work? How does the hero have no power? And this is exactly what's wrong with just, from a symbolic standpoint. This is one of the major deep issues with the, the epistemology of Black culture, I guess you can say. Like the idea that there is a huge amount of men who are intellectually and symbolically averse to the very concept of power. How can you be heroic if you have no power? And now when we get back to like shows like A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, this is why white people on the internet celebrating the show and rallying around it as a token of Western culture, it makes a lot of the pro-Blacks on the internet very uncomfortable. Because white men apparently are comfortable themselves with the idea and the access to power, whereas for all kinds of reasons, a lot of Black men seem to be uncomfortable with the idea of power, and they only want access to power to the extent that they can use it against either literally or symbolically the white man. That is the only reason for power in the minds of these people, is to somehow continue on this never-ending war against the white man. That is the only reason power exists. Not to push your car down the road, not to keep the lights on in your house, not to push your ship to the outer limits of the galaxy, but to conquer the white man. That is the only reason that power exists in the minds of a lot of these liberal, left-leaning men. And that is one of the reasons why I just think about this notion of Black power, and it kind of bugs me. And you know what, before I get, I was going to close on that, but there's one last thing I do want to bring up, and that is Captain Durag. Yes, we have to talk about Captain goddamn Durag. Yeah. It's real. It's a thing. It's a thing. Thank Black women and the Disney Channel. Don't thank me. Don't thank me. I would never.
Really, AJ? You're supposed to be cleaning your room right now. We agreed that you could only watch all the Captain Durag movies if your room was clean. And it's far from clean.
Come on, Mom. I can clean my room after. There's a new Captain Durag sequel coming out on Friday, and we need to watch all his movies before we see it. Let's just watch them instead. As a family.
Oh, so cute. I mean, puppy eyes ain't gonna work this time.
You just gonna stand there all day like a bunch of soggy laundry? Help a brother out. A little flipping. Hold all the laundry tight. You gotta dip in. Then put these out of sight. When you're training to defeat the clutter, you need to whip it right. Let me introduce myself.
Yes, a superhero with a do-rag and as a cape. It's not a do-rag and a cape. His do-rag is his cape. and he lives in Slime City, and his evil nemesis is like literally trash. So basically, he fights garbage. He's a black man in a do-rag. The nigga fights garbage, and produced by the Disney Channel. And this crazy black woman, let me show you homegirl right here. This crazy broad here.
Finally have a superhero with our culture. Let's not. It's Camille here. I'm a writer on Hey AJ, and I'm the creator of Do Rag Man. I know it's Black History Month. Let's take a deep breath together, and let's release ourselves from the shackles of respectability politics. Come on, guys. We finally have a superhero with our culture. Let's not talk about semantics, and let's just focus on what's happening. If you've seen the show, you know the bunnies in every episode. Slime City is funny. Come on, guys. Let's get into it. Where's the joy? Why is everything so serious? We got to celebrate our people. What Richard Wright would have wanted. He wouldn't want us to be like, let's just be respectable all the time and talk in stilted language. Let's enjoy our culture. I created Do Rag Man because I'm obsessed with blaxploitation films, and I love Pam Grier, and I thought it would be super cool to have a little homage to that when we're creating a superhero for Hey. And what was better than using a do-rag? Because I own a 6-foot do-rag, and it makes me feel like a superhero when I wear it. Why couldn't someone be like,
She owns a 6-foot do-rag, and it makes her feel like a superhero. She could have at least made the Captain Do-Rag a chick. You had to make him a dude. Now you made him a dude. He's just gay because of you now. Because of you, he's basically gay now.
like that in AJ's imagination? I really like exploitation films. And yeah, we're poking fun a little bit at respectability politics because you know what? AJ and her family, they're already excellent. Her dad's a football player. Her mom's a chef. What more do they have to prove? Why can't they have a little do-rag man superhero? Come on, Wakanda forever! Check out Hey AJ and watch it for yourself. It's great for the culture. And there's Jamaican American representation on the Disney Channel, which I never had as a child. And I was so lucky to contribute to. I felt so lucky to be a part of that show. My dad was in the NFL. And so it was really a show that I was really able to tap into my inner child. And growing up, I would have loved a do-rag man. So check it out. Let your kids watch it. Come on, guys.
Are we fans of Captain Do-Rag, y'all? What do you guys think? Is Captain Do-Rag doing it or not? Are we fans of the Do-Rag man? It's not really what I had in mind, but you know. Y'all do y'all. Damn it, where did that video go? I had something else I was going to queue up with that too. Because apparently, not only is the whole character just tacky, maybe stereotypical even, but I think she stole that character from another guy. I think that's not her character.
Fuck Disney. I think this Disney cartoon copied my film Super Nigga, and it's fuck Disney. I think this Disney cartoon copied my film Super Nigga, and it's not a coincidence. I went to high school with the creator of the character, okay? It's just a coincidence that she used to follow me on TikTok. It's just one big coincidence that Captain Do-Rag looks just like my character Super Nigga. It's just a coincidence that Super Nigga makes a joke about his name.
And who the hell are you supposed to be anyway?
Captain Africa, Do-Rag Man.
Yuck.
It's just a coincidence that the creator of the show said they just paying homage to blaxploitation movies and Pam Grier.
What up, you jive turkey mother?
Shut your mouth. My name's Daddy, and I'm making a black-ass movie called Super Nigga.
It's a coincidence that there's a D on the character's chest in Captain Durag. And Super Nigga's alter ego's name is Daddy, which is my name. Look how Black Twitter reacted when we dropped Super Nigga versus when Disney dropped Captain Durag. See, this is what happens when you allow Hollywood and white people to make black shit.
I don't think Hollywood should make any black movies.
I'm gonna have to honor
The secret society of magical Negroes, we don't need that.
If you want Super Nigga, you can put the money into my pockets. Also, I'm currently raising money for my movie, A Nightmare on Malcolm X Boulevard, which stars me and Alana Glazer, and it's an anti-snow bunny hopping horror comedy. We've already raised $60,000 on Kickstarter, and we're trying to raise $200,000.
Did he say an anti-snow bunny horror movie? Isn't that what Get Out was? Wasn't Get Out an anti-snow bunny horror movie? They literally showed you what could happen if you get to the wrong snow bunny and her house. They secretly want to steal you for your pimp juice. We already did that movie. What do you mean?
My 23 years on this planet, I never expected Disney to create a black superhero called Captain Durag who cleans trash, has a white snow bunny sidekick, and lives in Slime City. But here we are. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Disney Junior aired a show called Hey AJ, created by Martellus Bennett, and in episode 8, they introduced a superhero called Captain Durag. And just look for yourself.
Really, AJ? You're supposed to be cleaning your room right now. We agreed that you could only watch all the Captain Durag movies if your room was clean.
So not only did y'all think it was a good idea to make bro have a do-rag Todd mask and cape that serves zero purpose, but to make him a glorified trash man too? And not only that, the shot where the mom comes into the camera is weird as fuck, because why are y'all showing a face full of ass to kids?
No bullshit.
Is Captain Durag supposed to be some type of representation? Like, am I missing something?
Oh,
this
God.
isn't what we meant when we said we wanted black superheroes without electricity powers.
Facts.
This man, Martellus Bennett, needs to be tried for his crimes against the black community.
You'll be covered in trash when I'm done with you, Mr. Raggedy.
Because it's the fact that this isn't even a satirical cartoon like the Boondocks or Legend of Chamberlain Heights. This is an actual children's show. So not only is this absurdly outrageous, but to air this shit during Black History Month calls for some type of justice to be served against this nigga. I will say, the only funny shit that came out of this was the comments on the episode. I'm seeing people asking if he's gonna fight Lady Lacefront with Bonnet Boy anytime soon. Like, that shit had me fucking crying. I'm not gonna hold y'all.
Like I said, man, I struggle with the concept of black culture and traditional heroism. I'm not the only one, apparently, but maybe we'll get it together at some point. Maybe we'll get it together, but I just wanted to do that one real quick for you guys. I might come back later with another show, but we're going to wrap this one up right here. Thank y'all so much for watching. Shout out to Mr. Enigma with the $2. Please thank y'all. Hit that super chat button on your way out the door, man. We are done.
It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done.